So children, we have already completed the lesson part earlier, and now it is time for us to do the activity part of this lesson, right? So the exercise and activity part of this lesson actually starts with write T for true and F for false, means a true or false question. Okay, so the exercise starts with a true or false question. See, 6 sentences are given here. 6 sentences are given here, and we need to read these sentences one by one. Check with what we have learned in the lesson. Check with what we have learned in the lesson, and based on what we have learned in the lesson, we need to check whether these sentences are true or false, right? So how can we know whether these sentences are true or false? Yes, if the sentences conveys the idea, something that we have learned in the lesson, then the sentence is a true one. Okay, if the sentence here conveys the same idea that we have learned in the lesson, then it's a true statement. If it is not the same, then it is a false statement. Okay, so the first sentence is, the rays of the sun fall directly on the equator. True. The rays of the sun falls directly onto the equator. Okay, it's true. The rays of the sun fall directly on the polar region. Does the sun rays fall directly on the polar region? No, isn't it? Yes, it's slanting. Isn't it? Yes, the sunlight or the sun rays, when it fall on the polar region, they are more slanting than the straight one that receives on the equator. Ludhiana is cooler than Shimla. Ludhiana is a place which is actually located in Punjab, isn't it? Punjab, above Punjab we have Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, and Shimla is the capital of Himachal Pradesh. So Shimla is of a higher altitude and Ludhiana is of a lower altitude. Okay, Shimla is located on a higher altitude, whereas Ludhiana is located on a lower altitude. So as we go high in the altitude, the temperature decreases or increases? Decreases, isn't it? As we go high in the altitude, the temperature decreases. So Shimla being on a higher altitude should be cooler, isn't it? Shimla is cooler than Ludhiana. Ludhiana is not cooler. Ludhiana is warmer than Shimla because Ludhiana is located on a lower altitude. Okay, so the answer is false. Places near the sea are very cold. Thus we have studied in the lesson with the help of an example comparing Mumbai and Delhi, isn't it? So what we have said is Mumbai has a moderate climate, but Delhi have the extreme climates, isn't it? So does it mean that the coastal regions are comparatively cooler? No. They are not cold. Okay, they are not cold. They have moderate climate. Means neither too cold nor so hot. Because of land breeze and sea breeze. So the answer for the fourth sentence is again false. Right? Fifth one. As altitude increases, it gets hotter. Is it so? As we go higher in the altitude, what happens? The temperature decreases. Means what? Is it becoming hotter or colder? Colder, isn't it? The temperature decreases means it's become colder. The temperature increases means it's becoming hotter. Right? So here, as altitude increases, it gets hotter is a wrong answer because it's a wrong statement, because as we go high in the altitude, the temperature decreases. It becomes cooler. Right? So the answer is again false. Torrid zone has a very hot climate. So what is torrid zone? Yeah, the climatic zone which lies on the either side of equator is called the torrid zone, isn't it? It extends up to the Tropic of Cancer in the north and the Tropic of Capricorn in the south. The climatic conditions in between these two regions is extremely hot, isn't it? So the torrid zone has a very hot climate, right? So that is a true statement. Okay. So we will check the answers once again. See, the rays of the sun fall directly on the equator is a true statement. The rays of the sun fall directly on the polar region is a false statement because there it is falls not as a direct hit, but it is a slanting one. Okay. Third one, Ludhiana is cooler than Shimla is false because Ludhiana is of a lower altitude and Shimla is of a higher altitude. Places near sea have very cold climate is a wrong statement because it's moderate climate. As altitude increases, it gets hotter is again a wrong statement because it becomes cooler at that time. Then torrid zones have very extreme hot climate is a true statement. Okay. So now I will keep the screen the same for another minute for you so that you can read it yourselves. Right? Okay, children. So now we have come to the next one. Fill in the blanks. What is the next question? Fill in the blanks. First one. Dash is the presence of water vapor in the air. So what do we call the presence of water vapor in the air? The air which has smaller molecules of water vapor. So that is called the humidity. What do we call it? Humidity is the presence of water vapor in the air. Humidity is the presence of water vapor in the air. The areas near to the poles are in the dash zone. So we know around the equator it's very hot, and as we go farther from the equator it gets cooler, and the coolest regions are the polar regions. So Arctic region and the Antarctic region are the coolest, the most coolest places in the Earth. And what do we call that place? What is a zone? It's known as a frigid zone, isn't it? Frigid, frigid zone. So the zone that is of extreme cold temperature is called a frigid zones. Okay. So the areas near the poles are in the frigid zone. Now, the coastal areas have a dash climate. Again, we have this with the example of Delhi and Mumbai. So Mumbai is on a coastal region, and Mumbai experiences moderate climates, whereas Delhi, an interior city, experiences extreme climates, extreme hot and extreme cold. So the coastal areas have a moderate climate. So what kind of a climate is found in the coastal areas? Moderate climate. Now, the dash zone lies between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. The zone that lies in between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, which passes through the equator, is known as the torrid zone. So what is the zone that passes through equator until the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer? Torrid zone. Torrid zone. As we go away from equator, it gets cooler, isn't it? The extreme, the sun rays hit directly on the equator, and that region is the hottest region. That region is also known as the torrid region, isn't it? So as we move away from equator, after torrid we have temperate zones, and after that frigid zones, isn't it? So torrid, temperate, frigid. So as we move away from the equator, either in the north or in the south, it becomes cooler. Then, a person forecasting a weather is called a meteorologist. So, who is the person who studies the weather conditions and predict how the weather during a particular day is? So, he is known as a meteorologist, right? Okay, now we will check the answers once. Yes. Humidity is the presence of water vapor in the air. Humidity is the presence of water vapor in the air. We have read it in the lesson now. Towards the coastal regions will be very humid and a sultry kind of a climate will be present. So humidity is the presence of water vapor in the air. The areas near the poles are in a frigid zone. The most cold zone. The coastal areas have a moderate climate, neither too cold nor too hot. So it's a moderate zone. The zone that lies between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn is a torrid zone, the extreme hot zone on the Earth's surface. As we go far away from the equator, it gets cooler. As we go far away from equator, it gets cooler. A person forecasting a weather is called a meteorologist. Right? So these are the questions and the answers. So now I will keep the screen the same for another minute so that you can read the questions and the answers once again by yourselves. Okay?